Hey everyone, welcome back to my podcast. I'm your host Sajjaad, and today we have a guest here, Antonella. She has a pretty interesting backstory, being a person who's not from the United States, who actually moved here and now pursued computer science and then ultimately landed a role as a software engineer at Microsoft. She's also a part-time content creator. And now I don't want to give too much of your background because that's something I want to ask you. Antonella, thank you for joining us here today. How are you doing?
Yeah, great. Thank you so much for having me, Sajjaad. I'm excited to chat today.
Yes, of course, of course. And on that, I want to get started right away. A little about your background. Give it to us.
Yeah, so you kind of gave the main points there. I was born and raised in Argentina, actually. And after high school in Argentina, I went to school for fashion design. And I did that over there for a while. I did illustration, graphic design, all that kind of artistic stuff. And then when I turned 21, I moved to the United States. And long story short, I was unsatisfied with that career path, and I started looking for other stuff to do. My brother was studying computer science, and so that was the outlet that I found. He kind of pulled me in, and I decided to go back to school and study computer science, and here we are.
Wow. Wait, so you made a big jump from fashion design to sort of the tech world. Tell us why, how, what went on there.
Yeah, so I don't know about you and kind of what your process was like, kind of figuring out what you wanted to do, which I'm quite curious about actually. But for me, I first thought that I wanted to do something really super creative. I grew up drawing and sewing, so I always thought this is what I'll be doing for the rest of my life. I just really enjoyed it. But then as I grew older and I started to learn more about myself and the way that I worked and my relationship with creativity, I realized that that path was too, I guess, too, maybe too loose, too unbound, if you want to put it that way. Like there were
But
days
when
where
did
I
you
would wake
realize
up
that?
and I would say after a couple years of working on my own businesses. So I was creating sewing patterns for other designers and stuff like that. And I went through a year or two of just sitting by myself and really with my own work and going through a tumultuous roller coaster of one day I love it, one day I hate it. And I really couldn't handle that emotional aspect of creativity. So when I discovered computer science and I started learning how to code, I really loved that there was creativity, but there was a boundary of you got this right or you got this wrong. And I
Oh, I
can't just
see.
go off in my head. So yeah, I don't know if you can relate to that at all,
No, I
but
see what you're saying. Yeah. Like you get to, for example, if you're like building like a website, right? You get to be creative in terms of the way that you implement it, but at the end there's like a set way that you need to do it, right? So I see what you're saying there. But how did you
yeah.
know that computer science was the thing that would have that? Like, like you made like the decision and went college, fashion design, ultimately started like the business for that. But like computer science of all the options, why that?
Yeah, well, I had actually considered at the time architecture and business too, along with computer science. So business I saw is something that was applicable to a lot of things, but also just didn't feel like the right fit for me. And then architecture, I thought, well, it's the creative aspect, but you have more of math and the structure there. But ultimately, like I didn't want lives to depend on me in that way. So I started trying out coding and I loved it. And that's just kind of, it was the fit for me. I also really, really liked that I didn't need any supplies, anything, like just a computer, and I could build anything. And that was a really refreshing shift from needing pencils and paint and fabric and all that stuff. So it was kind of that personal journey. Did you always know that you wanted to go into computer science, or did you have other alternatives?
Growing up, I was always like pretty decent at like, your math. And ultimately in high school, I got my first exposure, AP computer science, and I did pretty well in it. And when there's like a subject that like, not only do you do well in it, but you're interested in it and it just like naturally flows to you, like that natural flow, that's what kind of picked up. But although I would say like, in terms of like my academics at high school, I was like a very try hard student. Like almost everything seemed like it was going for me. Like I was passionate about history, passionate about like math as a whole, passionate about like sciences. So if you asked me like in 10th grade what I wanted to pursue, I would have been like, yeah, there's a whole bunch of things I could. But then reality struck to me when you were applying to college and you can only pick one thing and you need to make sure that thing is right. So I ultimately picked computer science. And I did one internship the summer after my senior year of high school. And not only that, I started talking to people who were majoring in computer science in college and how lucrative the field is for like the salaries you can get for just being a fresh college graduate. Pretty insane. So it was just very motivational, I gotta say.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a selling point for sure.
Yeah. But is there any part of you that like misses fashion design?
Not really, surprisingly. I thought I would, but it just feels like such a lifetime ago. And I've been so caught up in the excitement of learning all these new things and proving to myself that I actually can, because of course I went through that whole imposter syndrome of, well, can I actually do this whole other thing if I've never had that background? I wasn't exposed to it in high school. Like I didn't know that computer science existed when I was in high school. So I didn't think I could. And so it's been really rewarding and quite all consuming. So I haven't had much time or bandwidth to miss it, which I guess is a good thing.
Yeah. I mean, it's just kind of insane, like the confidence that's required to, okay, so you've been through this, you picked a career, or you went to college, you picked a career in this field, and then to make that like 180, 360, or whatever you want to call degree switch into computer science, that's kudos to you.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it's been a crazy ride, to be honest.
And I guess speaking a little about this crazy ride of yours, so as a person who not only like you moved from like another country to the United States, I can't even imagine like the language barrier or any sorts of things like that, the difficulty of like leaving your hometown, switching majors on top of all that. And also a person, you were like a little older than traditional like college students pursuing their bachelor's in computer science. So tell me about that. Like how did that make you feel? What was going on at that time?
Yeah, so it was a whole mix of emotions, really. There was the excitement of it, the newness of I'm learning something new, and I think I'm finding my way finally. And then of course the other contrasting side of, well, I feel like I've wasted a lot of time and I'm late to everything, and all these kids are way ahead of me and getting in my way in that sense, the mind part of it. It was a long time of me reframing that and telling myself, like, no, this is the timing that's perfect for me. And the things that I did before give me this whole extra background and context. And it has helped me also with things like UI and that kind of stuff, where I've been able to tap into all the stuff that I studied previously, like theory of design and color theory and all these things that I've been able to repurpose. So it was a lot of growth too, personally. And then through that too, being an international student and kind of feeling out of place in that way, where you have a lot less things that you can do as opposed to other students. So like you apply to opportunities and maybe they don't sponsor, so you don't qualify for those. And that's when you're in the thick of it, you take it personally, and then you think like, well, but it's just a circumstance. It doesn't define me. It's just a fact of the situation. But yeah, that's kind of the gist of what it was like.
And I guess speaking about that sponsorships thing, so like sometimes like when I make videos like TikTok, Instagram, I get like some comments saying that, is it going to be harder for me that I'm international? And honestly, I think the ugly truth is, yes, it would be nice if everything was truly a meritocracy, that the top students get the top jobs or the highest paying jobs. But like if you're an international student, it does cost money and time for companies to invest into you for a sponsorship, right? So that is like a slight barrier that exists. But tell us, as a person who's sort of been through it and now works at Microsoft, overcoming that barrier, what are some things that you did? Any advice?
Yeah. So I've noticed a couple of different things in that area. Some friends that I have that are, for example, in the aerospace or other engineering disciplines, there's more government work involved. So those spaces are a lot harder to get into as an international student, just because there's clearance and you
Yeah.
need to be a US citizen and stuff like that. So I thankfully didn't have a lot of those issues. It's just a matter of the size of the company. So for example, if you apply to big tech companies, like Microsoft gave me absolutely no issues. They were happy to sponsor. They have no problems with that. Usually it tends to be smaller companies that maybe don't have a department set out for that yet, or where the investment is truly a lot more. But yeah, if you go for those that do sponsor, it tends to simplify things for sure.
Were there any like resources to find which companies sponsor versus not that you're aware of?
Not that I used, no. Usually what I would do is just ask the recruiters.
Gotcha. And I guess speaking of like being like international at your time in college, or I guess being international and a little older, did you feel like imposter syndrome at all? And tell us about that.
Yeah, no, for sure. There was the one that I already mentioned, just coming from a very artistic background. I always saw myself as not being into technical things. Like I really enjoyed technical drawings and being very detail oriented and stuff like that. But things like sciences and math and all that stuff, I was good at it just because I was a really a try hard student, like you mentioned. So I would really like go hard on every subject and I could do well, but it wasn't like, oh, I'm good at it. I had to work at it. So I never saw myself going into any of those fields. But that part of it gave me a lot of imposter syndrome at first, of just like, it's harder for me. So am I a good fit here? That kind of stuff. And then, yeah, being international and seeing other people, being able to work outside and all those things that I think people don't realize how hard it is unless you're going through it. Like you're only allowed to work part-time and on campus. So it really restricts a lot of opportunities. So yeah, it's something you learn to navigate too. It was a lot of mental and personal growth to learn to accept things as they were and work with the constraints that I was presented. But I'm curious, like, did you have any imposter syndrome coming from a background of being exposed to computer science and having excelled at it and doing AP and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so there were always like some elements, because I think the weird thing about computer science, or I don't know if it's a weird thing, it's a common thing, that despite how qualified you might be, there's always going to be someone who's done it better. There's always going to be someone who's been coding since middle school. There's always going to be someone who went to some magnet school, went to some technology school, and then all you've done is AP computer science. And you got to realize that you're still much better than some other students who may not have done it or don't have any background, right? So there were like times where like you feel it like every now and then, or like sometimes you create like a mental competition between you and the person that like your buddy, your classmate who sits next to you, who like seems to get everything right away, right? But it's like a work in progress. I think as time passes by and as you start to realize what actually matters versus not, what classes matter versus not, or you start getting your own like internships and jobs and like life just progresses, you stop caring that much. I think like the imposter syndrome thing is like a very like beginner thing to worry about. I mean, for obvious reasons, you have no exposure, but still like I think like after like freshman, sophomore year, generally I haven't heard people like complain about that. It's usually like the freshmen who are like new to everything that feel like that. I mean, I definitely felt like here and there, but I think just know that as time progresses, you'll be successful in your own right, that it just passes by.
Yeah, for sure. I've noticed that as a full-time engineer too. When I first started, everything was new and I had no idea what was going on my team and what repo I was on, and this huge mountain of code that I didn't know what it did. And now I'm a year in and I'm like, oh, okay, I'm picking up this stuff and I understand what's going on. And you start realizing that it's just a part of the journey and how you learn within the industry.
And that's actually a great segue into your work life. So as a software engineer at Microsoft, first big question, how did you get in?
Yeah. So It all started back in 2020 when the world shut down. I had just started my bachelor's portion of my degrees because I did a 2+2 kind of thing. So I did an associate's first and
Okay.
then transferred to a four-year university. So at that point, I was able to start applying to internships and I would qualify. I wouldn't qualify before. So recruiters would tell me, hold off until you get to your four-year university. And so 2020, I started applying, but I didn't know data structures or any of that stuff yet because I hadn't taken those classes. So I did this program called Technical Interview Prep Course by CodePath. I did it that summer, and that taught me the basics of data structures and a little bit of algorithms. And so by that fall, I was feeling a little more comfortable applying to the beginner internships, like at the time, Twitter University and the Explore program at Microsoft.
Yeah, Amazon has like a future engineer program. Like there's like like Facebook University. I think Google has like a step internship. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I started applying to all of those where my knowledge matched what I would be asked during the interviews. I also applied to regular ones too and bombed those because I was not prepared, but I was like, whatever. Yeah. I'm already applying, so I'll give it a shot. And by the end of that year, I heard back from Microsoft. I did all of their interview rounds and I ended up getting into the Explore program. So I did one internship in 2021 that summer and then another 2022. And then I got a return offer as a full-time engineer.
So after you did the Explore program, was there another interview for the internship and another interview for full-time, or was it just return offers?
No, it was so if you complete your internship successfully and there's headcount for whatever team you're coming back to and that kind of stuff, then you automatically get a return offer.
Oh, okay. And did you, for your Explore program, what was the interview like? What was the application process like, if you remember?
Yeah, I remember quite a bit for that one. So I applied on their website. I had a current employee at the time refer me to, so hopefully that helped. I don't know from my end how that works.
It doesn't matter now.
It's always worth it's always worth doing it. Then I heard from them for a phone screen, and that included just a quick chat with an engineer and a simple coding problem, just like talking through it. And I got past that to an interview day, and it was, I think, 3 back-to-back interviews, and those were both technical and behavioral. Yeah, and it was all remote at the time. They had already switched fully remote because before the pandemic, they used to fly you out for those. For that whole interview loop, you'd fly out and do it in person and get to see the campus and that kind of stuff. But they don't do that anymore.
Makes sense, right? So as a software engineer at Microsoft, how's like your work-life balance looking like?
It's pretty good. I love my team. We have a really good culture around that. My manager's been known to tell us, like, I don't want to see you online on weekends and that kind of stuff. So I appreciate that there's that care for not burning you out, because they realize that if you burn out too soon, then you're not going to output too much in the long run. So yeah, I've really enjoyed getting to see that, because I also came with this preconceived notion that, oh, it's going to be super grindy, and maybe some places are like that, but I've been glad to see that this is pretty balanced. What's your experience like? Because I know you've been working for a few years now, right?
Yeah, just about coming in around 2 years now. I think it's very company and team dependent. Thankfully, I have like a very, very chill team, chill company. And yeah, so similarly, like my manager says, no working on weekends, no working on holidays. And no working like past like certain hours, like you need to take your breaks, like very, very emphasis on that. And it's just been like super awesome. Like I personally work remotely, and anytime I need to take a break, go to the gym, to get food, right, like whatever I want to do, I'm able to do. And literally all I have to do is get my work done, attend meetings. There's no sense of micromanaging. There's no sense of like you need to be like online. I know some people like to shake their mouse to show that they're online. Like there's nothing of that sort. And yeah, and so it's just been super awesome. And I guess I'm blessed to be like a remote software engineer. But yeah, I mean, I think overall the culture comes in from the company and the team. So even if we were in person, I'm sure it would be pretty chill too.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and I can relate to that a lot too, because it's the exact same way where as long as we're delivering and we have good communication with our manager, that we're on track with stuff, like you handle your time and show up to your meetings and that kind of stuff. And it's also very flexible. If there's a day I want to work from home, I can work from home. Like I don't have to let my dad know, like, hey, I want to work from home. You know, like it's like you're an adult and you can handle your stuff. So I appreciate that.
And I guess speaking of that, I guess like that's kind of like a perk we enjoy. What are some other perks that you enjoy as a Microsoft engineer?
Yeah, so I'm really grateful that I have access to so many brilliant minds. They have people working in all different kinds of things. You know, like Microsoft has so many different products in different areas. I personally work in the developer division, so we create a lot of the stuff that other engineers use outside of Microsoft, even like Visual Studio Code, .NET, all that kind of stuff. And so it's really cool to just be able to ping someone that knows, you know, like someone who started, say, like, I don't know, Visual Studio back when it first launched, and you can talk to them about that. It's nerdy, but it's like it's cool. And then something else I've really been enjoying recently is I've been able to get involved with their streaming, like educational streaming that they do on YouTube for Spanish audiences. So I've been able to stream for their Spanish outreach, to be able to give educational content to people that speak Spanish, and want to also be developing like with Blazor and .NET and all that stuff. So it's been cool to get to do that too, along with the coding.
Okay, but like some non-educational perks, anything you enjoy?
Well, yeah, there's also, they have Perks Plus, which is a set amount of money that they offer you to put towards anything like hobbies or anything recreational or wellness. So you can buy equipment, or you can pay for your gym or classes or concert tickets. So you get that every year. And you can expense it through that and buy yourself something cool that you wouldn't normally spend on.
Awesome. Yeah, I actually have something very similar to that. It's about like $2,000 a year you can spend on like gym stuff. You can spend on like basically anything physical or mental well-being, which also includes like flights. Like you can, anytime you're taking a flight, you can expense that up to like $2,000 a year. And yeah, it's just being a remote software engineer, getting like free internet, free cell phone bill. It's just like a whole bunch of nice things that they look out for us.
Nice. Yeah. I don't know if they do that here for remote. I haven't checked that because I've always been in person, but that's cool.
All right. Well, I want to shift gears a little towards coding projects, because that's actually one of the biggest things I get asked around. Do you have any coding projects for this? And I'm kind of interested. What are some projects that you've done in the past?
Yeah. So back when I was learning how to code and building up my resume, I did a few different projects at hackathons. Some of those were an AR experience where we created a virtual gallery. That was part of a hackathon. That was at Technica. We also went to a couple others where I worked with my team on a mobile app that you could scan different like bottles and different types of waste, and it would tell you how to dispose properly of them. So how to recycle them, or for instance, like bottles, you have to remove the cap. So because they can't be recycled together. So it would tell you stuff like that. And then personal projects, I also worked on an iOS app for like households and groceries, so that if they were out of something, that they could track it all within that same app. And so different people within a household could track that stuff. Yeah, and those were mostly the ones that I had on my resume back when I was in school and learning how to code and that kind of stuff. I also worked on class projects, but I had so many outside of class that I didn't really list those because those weren't as interesting, or I wasn't interested in them, so I didn't really want to have to talk about them.
Yeah, that's the thing with class projects. They're kind of generic in some sense, but the spicy ones comes from like your research or like your individual project stuff, right?
Exactly. Yeah. How are like what are some of your projects that you worked on?
My main ones that I've actually like listed on my resume. So I did this like one COVID-19 death predictor project back when like COVID hit a couple months before. So like this was like that fall, and it was basically like we took these different algorithms, different data sets, and based off of every country's current like statistics about like different population densities, things like that, it would predict how many deaths this country would incur, as well as like which factors contributed most heavily to that. So that actually made for great like talking points in interviews because of like the impact. I did one web application project, which got me to practice some of my front end skills. It was this like Pomodoro web application. It was like a pretty basic, it was a classic project. And yeah, it was just pretty simple, just front end stuff. I've done like a couple like other projects here and there. I did one like Slack bot thing, which would like give a person an alias if you like type in something. So that was pretty cool. So yeah, just like a wide variety of different things. Honestly, you just need like a couple of different ones with certain skill sets or like target skill sets that you're going for in your potential role, and then they make for great talking points in interviews. But I wanted to ask you, so as a person who kind of have dealt with like a lot of different technologies, different projects, and different things at Microsoft now, what are some skills that you have acquired for front end, and what are some skills you've acquired for back end?
Yeah, so I've dabbled in both here and there. So my first internship was mostly front end. I did Angular there. And then I started getting more into backend during my second internship and now as a full-time engineer. And I've been learning a lot of different things about networking and then like front end design for the platform for my product, with TypeScript and all that kind of stuff. I've been working on Visual Studio Code stuff, like for Visual Studio extensions, that kind of stuff. So it's been a whole mix of different things. And really what it has taught me the most is how to learn more efficiently and how to pick up stuff. That was something that I went into the internships, especially not realizing that whatever I knew before didn't really matter in the sense of you're going to use Java because you know Java right now. No, like, yeah, I interviewed in Java, but I haven't touched Java since I started my first internship. And that was like 3 years ago. I realized that you're going to be thrown into something that you don't know anything about. Like I hadn't touched Angular ever. And they told me, yeah, this is your internship project and you're fully capable of picking it up. It's just you have to learn how you learn and how to ingest information more effortlessly.
Yeah, it's I hadn't really like known JavaScript till like one internship. I knew like Java and like some bit of like Python, but like, that's why I tell people like 90% of your degree won't directly apply to your job. It like teaches you like the disciplines that you like need to know, or like the way to think, but like you're not going to be applying class by class per se on your job. It's not like computer science is not one of those degrees. The most important part of like the computer science degree is learning how to learning how to process, how to think like a programmer, all those like just like fundamentals in a weird way. Like it's necessary things, but it's like so weird because like they don't directly apply.
Exactly. Yeah. And then you keep recreating that experience of college over and over again at work forever. So people think like, oh, I'm done with school and that's it. I'm not studying ever again. Not here.
Yeah. I want to transition into looking at your resume. This is actually, you sent it in, so thank you for that. All right. So first question I want to ask you is, what is something good about your resume?
Good. Well, I would say first the order stuff. I have education at the top, then skills, projects, and then experience. I had projects first because I didn't have any real technical experience in
so
the
this is the
workplace.
resume that got you into Microsoft?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Okay,
yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I showed off experience through my projects, and then I added as experience things that I had done related to programming but were volunteer work and that kind of stuff. And then leadership and awards and events that I had attended. Mm-hmm. And then something else that's good, I think it's just organized and simple and clean, which recruiters appreciate when it's not too chaotic.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. But if there's something that you could improve on your resume, what would that be?
Yeah, so the one thing that I always regret when I look at this one, because it ended up being like the one that got me in, is that I wish I had included more numbers and more impact that I had. Not just like learned something or helped kids with this, but like how many kids and what was the numeric impact that you had. I think that would have made it a lot more solid.
Yeah, numbers are game changers. Like they drive eyeballs to your resume. They quantify your experiences. They give kind of like what you were saying, like the impact, right? It's like the impact you're able to have, like you can like quantify that. And I think another thing is, you know, the XYZ format. Have you ever heard of that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like you used X to do Y that had Z impact, right? That's actually the format Google tells you to put your resume in. And yeah, so I think that's very, very important. How many numbers do you have? I see your GPA number, but yeah, I guess, there you could definitely include more. But I guess other than that, what are like some common mistakes that you notice people make on their resumes?
Sometimes, I notice a lot like the order tends to be a little jumbled and not what the recruiters expect. Or adding inconsistent information. So like the verbs won't be consistent. One listing will have in present tense, won't past, that kind of stuff. That's very easy to spot and makes it look less clean and put together. Then also trying to be too creative with it. You don't want to have colors or tons of columns and stuff like that. Like you're not designing like a magazine or anything like that. So keep it as simple as you can. Recruiters go through tons of these. So if it's too busy or too
ugly, or
if it attacks your senses, then they might just move past it. So you want to make sure that it's clean and simple. What are some things that you notice? Because I feel like you're closer to that demographic of.
So some common mistakes. Wow, you went over quite a few. Let me think. I guess this is something that isn't talked about too much, and it's going to translate into the next segment. But knowing, like almost having your resume memorized is very essential for interviews, or even if you're meeting up someone at the career fair, right? So when it comes to the interviews, and I guess we might as well go into the next segment, which is like behavioral interview tips. You want to have your resume memorized so that you can drive your experiences from it. Like for example, if someone asks you, what are your strengths or what are your weaknesses? My strength is communication. For example, I was the leader of my robotics club. I demonstrated through that. One of my weaknesses is I'm too detail oriented. For example, at my internship at this company, as you can see, I was heavily working on this one project, and it just makes it sound way nicer. It makes you sound like you actually know what you put on there, and it makes like the experiences seem a little more real than just something you slapped on your resume. Even like projects, it makes it sound more real rather than just something that you copied off of GitHub. So like like I always try to have like my resume memorized. I don't know why I keep messing up there. My resume memorized, because it just great talking points. And in fact, sometimes recruiters will just ask you, "Tell me about this experience. Tell me about this experience," and you don't want to be stumbling. You want to like have it down to a T.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've attended a couple of conferences where they had career fairs, and I was going with Microsoft, and some students would come up to me wanting to talk about their resume, and they would say like, "Do you mind if I read it?" And we just start reading it. So it creates this barrier of it's not a conversation that we're having; it's you are reading me something, and it pushes the person away almost like, and it also makes it, like you said, seem like you just copied it from somewhere, so you don't know it by heart. You don't know what you did, so you have to read it, which I know a lot of students are really nervous at that point. So that's why you want to practice and memorize it and train it so that you can come across as you actually know what you did and not let those nerves get in the way at that point.
And I guess speaking a little more into the interview, do you have any other behavioral interview tips?
Yeah, the STAR method, which I'm sure most people know, it's really popular, is a framework to draft out your answers. So what I did when I was preparing for behavioral interviews was I created a little Notion database, and I had any experience that I had gone through or a project that I worked on, anything like that. I put it in the STAR framework. Situation, people can find it. I'm not going to remember it by heart right now. But I just framed it in that way. And then to your point, to be able to recite this or just talk about it without looking at my resume, I would go through that database every day and make sure that I knew what I had there and kind of rehearsing that and memorizing it. I also looked up some of the common interview questions. There's Glassdoor that has a lot of the behavioral questions there for different companies. So I made sure to read those and see what experiences I had that I could apply to answers for that. And so having that database helped a ton because I just would have stuff off the top of my head. And it sounded, like you said, really natural and like it went through it because I did, but the nerves get in the way sometimes.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. But just to rephrase what you said, just take your experiences, put them in interview answers and do a ton of prep. So when it comes to interview time, you're not nervous and you'll be able to speak out from your heart.
Exactly.
All right. Well, I think that's super, super helpful because I think people know technical interviews. We talk about it all the time, data structures, algorithms. Come on. But behavioral interview is sometimes often neglected. So I wanted to have a segment there. I hope this helps you guys. And go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just going to add that they go such a long way because sometimes you may not even get the technical interview, like the problem that they give you, you may not get a full answer and a full resolution. But if you're able to go through the behavioral portion and talk through your problem and show the interviewer that you know how to work with someone and that you're a good fit for the team, they know that the other stuff you can learn and they might even hire you. So
yeah, for sure. I mean, that's the goal, right?
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's about all the questions I had for you. I really appreciate you for joining on today's podcast. And for those who are curious, check out Antonella'S page, Instagram, TikTok, any other socials you have?
YouTube.
Yeah. Check out her platforms. And thank you so much for joining us here today.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for inviting me. It was fun.
All right. Take care.